The movie set in 2050. The film opens in a world devastated by an environmental catastrophe. Nova, a survivor, roams the barren landscape, spotting a bird skeleton before being summoned back to base due to low oxygen. Back at base, she informs Simon, an elderly man in a wheelchair, of their need to journey to the past. Nova and her robot companion promptly prepare for departure. Post-preparation, Nova propels her spaceship from the dust-choked orange-tinted Earth into a wormhole leading to the past. Consequently, Nova crash lands in an unfamiliar dark forest. It's 2025, and as night falls, a young boy named Nas is seen riding a quad bike through the forest. Nas spots him and urgently requests his assistance to move the unconscious Nova from the crash site before she's discovered. Despite their swift departure, some police officers witness Nas, Nova, and the robot leaving the scene. Nas relocates them to a deserted factory where Nova, still unconscious, appears to have grown younger. Concurrently, Detective CLA interrogates the officers about the crash and the escapees they spotted. Consequently, CLA heads to the closest residence, which happens to be Nas's, discovering Nas's absence. He suggests she check the old factory. Meanwhile, Nas returns to the factory to find Nova awake. Claire's arrival at the factory startles Nova. She notices Nova's discarded spacesuit in the screeching departure of her stolen car, with her car gone. Claire rides Nas's quad bike to a military base. The next day, she shares their findings from the crashed spaceship with the military. They've traced the pilot's fingerprints to a young girl named Nova, a puzzling discovery as Nova is only 12 years old in this timeline. On the road, Nova inquires about Nas's plans for the money. He shares his dream of reuniting with his father in South America. Suddenly, their car starts to falter, emitting smoke. An elderly driver, Alon, pulls over and offers to help them. At his home, as roadside repairs aren't feasible, at his home, they meet his wife, Marion. Once the car is repaired, Nova announces that Marion has dinner ready. Over the meal, Marion notes Nova's unusual clothes and Nas's missing driver's license. A news report labels Nas a kidnapper, but the couple chooses to assist them instead. Spotting an incoming police car, Nova alerts Nas. They flee into the cornfields as Alon hides the stolen police car in his garage. Unexpectedly, the stolen car reverses into view of the police officer, prompting the fugitives to make their escape. Concurrently, Claire questions the present-day Nova. Her parents insist she was studying the previous night, puzzling Claire. After inspecting Nova's room and finding nothing out of the ordinary, she takes the family in for further questioning. A scientist informs Claire that the fingerprints found in the spaceship match Nova's, suggesting a possible cloning scenario. Claire is notified that her car has been located. CLA and her team promptly head to Alon's residence. Upon arrival, CLA questions the couple about the stolen car. Alon's lie is quickly exposed when an officer presents Nas's clothes. This triggers a full-scale search for the escapees. Meanwhile, Nas and future Nova have reached the forest. Nova spots a soldier and instinctively aims her futuristic weapon at him, significantly slowing him down. After some time, the fugitives arrive at a heavily guarded mansion. To avoid detection, they sneak in through a vent. Inside, they overhear a meeting discussing North Pole drilling plans. Nova instructs Nas to stay put while she confronts the meeting attendees. She recognizes a younger Simon among them and requests a private conversation. When Simon insists she share her message publicly, Nova warns them against drilling the North Pole due to the risk of releasing large amounts of methane. However, Simon's father, an older man, dismisses her warning, believing the risk to be minimal. Subsequently, Nova and Nas are escorted out by security. Nova observes Simon being reprimanded by his father for allowing children to interrupt their meeting. In the meantime, Claire remains surprised by the lethargic soldier. She later gets a call from a mansion security guard, informing her about the presence of the runaways. Concurrently, future Nova and Nas journey towards the sea. At this point, Nova discloses to Nas that she is a 37-year-old woman from the future who has become young again due to time travel. Back at the mansion, Clara reviews the surveillance footage of the two escapees. She notices they've hidden something behind Simon's car, prompting her to immediately contact the scientist to confirm if the present Nova is still in custody. The scientist confirms this, indicating there are two Novas. To protect young Simon, Claire dispatches a SWAT team to the billionaire's home. Eventually, the two escapees reach Simon's residence. Having retrieved future Nova, Nas and future Nova infiltrate the house, where they find Simon meditating in the living room. Nova discloses their future acquaintance and instructs Nas to project a holographic message from Simon's future self. As young Simon views the recording, the SWAT team discreetly surrounds the house. Despite viewing the message, Simon remains skeptical, suspecting it to be a ploy to extort him. Just as he's about to alert the police, Nas seizes Nova's gun and aims it at Simon. This prompts the SWAT team to enter the residence, followed by CLA. CLA hears a gunshot. She finds Nova on the floor and quickly checks her condition. It appears that Nas intercepted a bullet for Nova, resulting in the robot's destruction. Nas is terrified by the incident involving Nova. He hastily flees unnoticed and eventually reaches Alon's home, where he informs the old man about Nova's capture by the police. Overwhelmed with guilt, Nas breaks down in tears. Seeing his distress, Alon immediately comforts him. Shortly after, future Nova awakens in a hospital ward with CLA by her side. Claire then asks Nova if she can assist her with anything. Nova confides in Claire about her future mission to thwart Simon's disastrous plan. Prompted by this, Claire rushes to the base to inquire from the scientist about the feasibility of time travel, which he affirms is theoretically possible. Unexpectedly, Ad, which is under repair by the scientist, springs to life and absconds with the futuristic firearm. Despite their efforts, CLA and the scientist fail to apprehend the robot. CLA then notices young Simon on the premises. She informs him that the evidence they've collected supports Nova's claim of being from the future. Before Simon can reply, his father intervenes, leading Simon to dismiss Nova's concerns as an obsession with climate change. Suddenly, Nas notices Ad outside and rushes to it. The robot, having exhausted its power, collapses in its weakened state. Ad informs Nas that Nova is in an army base and urgently needs help. After delivering its final message, the robot shuts down. Determined, Nas grabs the futuristic gun that Ad had been carrying and heads straight to where Nova is held. Alon assists him by driving him to the checkpoint, where Nas is immediately arrested for questioning. In the interrogation room, the colonel tries to discuss Nas's intentions. However, Nas quickly draws his gun and shoots the colonel and another soldier, slowing them down. He then rushes to the scientist, who is adjusting Nova's spacesuit. Nas takes the spacesuit without harming the scientist. Upon finding Nova, he helps her into the spacesuit. After lifting her, Nas tries to make his escape. Nas has already transported Nova to her spaceship at the army base. Inside the spaceship, Nova expresses her gratitude to Nas for saving her life before exiting the spaceship. Nas bids her a reluctant farewell. Outside, he watches as the spaceship ascends into the night sky. CLA spots him and chastises him for his actions, but Nas remains silent, his gaze fixed on the departing spaceship. The spaceship journeys back to the future, but with Nova's mission unsuccessful, the world's barren state persists. Upon the discovery of her spaceship, Nova is swiftly moved to a small container for rest. After a period of rest, the young girl Nova reverts back to her adult form. She steps out of the tent to converse with future Simon. Simon, now aged, apologizes and informs of a change. Unexpectedly, a child appears referring to Nova as his mother, which bewilders her. Future Nas then reveals himself as the child's father. Nova then escorts her child through the perilous wasteland, where the boy spots a familiar bird skeleton. The child's curiosity about birds triggers a realization in Nova about the importance of rectifying the timeline for future generations. Filled with renewed determination, she agrees to undertake another journey to the past. Nova, however, wishes to return to the exact spot where she left Nas and the others. She also plans to be more direct with young Simon. Consequently, Nova returns to where Nas and CLA are located. She asks them if they missed her, even though she was only gone for a minute. Together, Nas and Nova set off for the North Pole. Upon reaching the North Pole, they quickly don their all-white outfits and head towards where Simon and his father are delivering a speech to an audience. During the speech, Simon expresses doubts about proceeding with the plan due to Nova's influence, but his father is adamant about drilling the North Pole. They notice the two children have used their guns to slow down the guards, causing the audience to scatter. Despite Nova's warning against continuing with the disastrous plan, Simon's father still attempts to activate the drilling machine. Luckily, Nova acts swiftly, shooting the obstinate old man and the drill's mechanism to slow it down. Overwhelmed, Simon breaks down, repeatedly expressing regret for not trusting Nova. Seeing his change of heart, Nova and Nas depart. Later, Nova drops Nas off at Alan's house, where they share a handshake and a hug. When Nas asks if they'll meet again in the future, Nova responds with a non-committal, maybe. Alan then emerges with a surprise gift. He has repaired Ad. Nova finally boards her ship and returns to the future, now on good terms with the couple. Nas freely enters the spare room in the house, only to spot a detective's car approaching the house later. Subsequently, Claire questions Nas about the spaceships appearing globally, inquiring if they are all from the future. Nas confirms they are and mentions they will return if needed. He also informs her that Nova has permanently returned to her timeline. Pleased with Nas's responses, CLA releases him, and gives back his quad bike. As he mounts the bike, Nas spots a car with the present Nova in the back seat, knowing they will reunite eventually. A joyful Nas follows Nova's car.